This is Zach Hampel, and you're watching the JV Podcast. And now, here are your hosts, Satchel White, Young Bin Kim, and Dalton Brown.
What is up, you guys? Welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, Satchel White. We're here with Dalton Brown, who is Young Bin Kim, and we're here with Jackson Ryan. What is up, my man?
Nothing much. Thank you all for having me on the show. I appreciate it.
For sure. And Dalton's the one that brought Jackson on. And tell me again how you guys met, because I'm not sure I remember exactly the story.
Well, back in 2019, I just come back with the Round Rock Express. My dad had been with the Astros before and changing affiliates from the Texas Rangers to the Houston Astros. I started doing an internship, going over all different bases of our organization. And I really think it started more in April, May during the games where I would see Dalton around going in and trying to catch foul balls or catch different things during the game. And I started a relationship because I saw his YouTube channel. And then we had him come up to the office where Chris Almendaris, our president, office is located at to give out baseballs to kids. And I believe that was against the San Antonio Missions back in May. And that's really where it all started, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, awesome. And if I remember, you work for the Express, right?
Well, I did an internship there in 2019.
Okay.
My family owns the Round Rock Express, Ryan Sanders Baseball. And so I'd kind of just getting back into it with my dad being with the Astros before I'd been out for a couple years. And minor league baseball is so different than major league baseball because minor league baseball is more the business side of it where you're not making baseball decisions for like the GM of the Round Rock Express, Tim Jackson, and our president, Chris Almendaris, are making business decisions. They're not making decisions of which guys go up and down. And so you have so much influx of players going up and down during the year. And so really to see the other side of the game was very interesting for me.
Right, yeah. I'm just reading this book right now. It's called, I forgot what it's called, like Life Before the Major Leagues, and it kind of tells the story of minor leaguers. And some of those guys, especially in AAA, going like very close to the majors, they get called up like, 9-10 times a year? I mean, it's just crazy. It's tough, right?
No, for sure. And you're going on bus rides and airplanes at 3 a.m., wake-up calls to get on 5 a.m. plane rides. And so it's a very tough life, but those guys at the AAA level are one step away from getting to the big leagues. And that's everybody's dream and goal is to get to the big leagues because at the end of the day, that's what they're all striving to do.
Right. And if I'm correct, you also had a little bit of baseball career yourself too, right? You played college?
Yeah, so I played at Mary Hardin Baylor my freshman year, a D3 here in Belton, Texas, just right outside of Austin, about an hour north. And so I always knew I wanted to play baseball. And growing up in the family that I did grow up in, I always loved the game. And so I played at Second Baptist High School. I was coached by Lance Bergman, Andy Pettit, and Rainer Noble. And then after that, I had the fortunate opportunity to go play collegiately. And so I went the D3 route. And I went and visited Texas Lutheran and Seguin, Shriner, and Kerrville, and UMHB here in Belton. And I just fell in love with UMHB. Okay. And I was fortunate enough to get in twice, and I faced Blackburn and did well. And then I faced TOU. TOU is one of the top teams for Division III and didn't do so well. And that's where I ended up playing my freshman year at here.
Okay. So, I mean, that's just a huge commitment. I mean, me, Dalton, and Youngbin all quit in high school. And, I mean, even in high school, you go out and you have to play every single day for years. I mean, it's just a huge commitment. And, yeah, like you said, baseball must be huge in your family, of course, because your grandfather, Nolan Ryan. And if I'm correct, he pitched 28 years in the major leagues?
27.
Yeah, 27. So he was there, started with the Mets, and he only won one championship in 1969 with the Miracle Mets. And then after the Mets, he got traded to the Angels, and then that's where he started blossoming and had a couple no-hitters there. And then he always wanted to be back in Texas because that's where our family is from. And so he went to Houston Astros right before the 1980 season, had two teams in 80 and 86 that could have won a World Series, but they just never could get over the hump. And then he ended up going to the Texas Rangers, and that's where he had Tom House as his pitching coach. And I'm doing stuff with Tom right now called mustard. And so basically what that is it's going to help pitchers and quarterbacks basically with their mechanics and help them gain proper velocity while throwing the best they can and while staying healthy.
Okay, so that's dope. Yeah, I didn't know that he really wanted to be back in Texas. So you guys are all originated from Texas?
Yep. And
Okay.
so growing up in the Austin area.
Okay, cool. So I'm interested, what is your guys' favorite teams? Are you guys pretty much like all Rangers fans from the Express or?
No, so my favorite team is wherever my grandfather or my dad was at. And
Okay.
so when my grandfather was with the Rangers from 2008 to 2012, we were Ranger fans because he was the president of baseball operations. And we went to two World Series. In 2010, we weren't as good as the San Francisco Giants, but in 2011, I really believe we were the best team in baseball. That year, we just one strike away 3 times, and that was very heartbreaking. And then in 2000, when my dad got the job with the Astros in 2013, it was more of a rebuild situation. And we went and won a World Series in 2017. And to see my dad crying on the field after that game 7 in LA was very special. And, we didn't get hurt in 2018. We could have had another opportunity to get to the World Series. And then in 2019, we just didn't have enough gas to get past Scherzer and Strasburg.
Mhm.
And so if you look at the time my dad was there from 2013 and 19, we went to 5 playoffs and had an opportunity to win multiple world championships. But I won't ever forget when my dad was on the field crying after game 7 in LA.
That must be an unbelievable experience. And yeah, the Astros were, I mean, they were very low. They were losing over 100 games, and then they finally did. They finally won the World Series.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, to move on to the topic of maybe today's baseball, where do you think Trevor Bauer is gonna go to?
Well, I feel like he's either going to go to the Angels or the Mets. The Angels have a lot of money and they need pitching. He's from California by LA area. So it
Mhm.
makes sense for him to be with the Angels. In my opinion, he's suited as a number 2 more than he is a number 1. But I also could see the Mets because the Mets have been spending all this money, just made the Francisco Lindor trade,
Mhm.
sorry, and have signed, catchers James McCann. And so obviously their new owner is willing to spend the money. And if they're willing to
Mhm.
spend the money, maybe on a George Springer or a Trevor Bauer, they could be even better. And so I see them
Right.
either going to the Angels or the Mets.
Right. I have to agree with that one. I mean, I have it down to those two teams. I've seen a few rumors for the Blue Jays, but I'm not really sure how big of a chance that he wants to leave the country and go to Toronto. Um,
Mhm.
us three actually talked about it, me, Dalton, and Youngbin. So I'm curious to see if you guys changed your prediction for it. So, Dalton, what do you think now?
Well, originally, a few months back, I said it would be the Yankees, and I gave the reason of the money that they have in hand, the amount of pitching they could use. But as Jackson just said, I mean, good points. It's down to the Angels and Mets, and personally, I think the Angels are going to get him. I mean, you look at a team who could really use a group of pitchers, I should say. I mean, Ohtani just got hurt, and he doesn't look like he's going to be pitching for a while. So, I mean, if you can get Bauer in that rotation, you got a team that could possibly, do very well, especially when you got Anthony Rendon and Mike Trout, and Ohtani can still hit. I mean, you got yourself a team that is going to do some pretty hard damage.
Hmm. Youngman, what do you think? I think you predicted the Padres last time we did the podcast, right?
Padres. Well, now I think that's out of the topic now.
Right, of course,
I
with
would
Blake
say
Snell
that's
and Darvish.
yeah.
Yeah.
I would say that's Trevor Bauer has to go to the Angels in my opinion because Angels they need starting pitching. That's their priority. Regardless of like how bad they did, they had amazing offense. Regardless of like how bad the pitching was. So I would say Trevor Bauer fits with the Angels, but it also makes sense that he goes to the Mets as well because Mets have been making moves. They've been spending all this money right now, getting Carlos Carrasco and Francisco Lindor. Their lineup looks pretty decent from my standpoint now, and
Hmm.
adding Carrasco to the rotation with Jacob deGrom, Noah Syndergaard, that is a pretty pretty heavy pitching rotation now. But
Hmm.
I want to add one more team that's in my mind, which is the Blue Jays. 2 days ago, I heard the news, the MLB talking about how Trevor Bauer is meeting up with Blue Jays,
Right.
and it also would make sense in my standpoint because Blue Jays, they've been rebuilding. All three top prospects of Vladimir Guerrero Jr., Bo Bichette, and Kevin Biggio, all like all like Hall of Fame sons. They have a special talent, and they have the potential to go further, like within the 5-6 years. So I say getting Trevor Bauer over there makes it like a veteran standpoint of reaching the playoffs in the future. That's
Yeah, I mean, yeah, for a team standpoint, like the rebuilding Blue Jays, it wouldn't be a bad idea. I just can't get over the idea of, I just don't think he's going to Toronto, but you never really know. And yeah, back to the Mets real quick. I mean, they've just had a history of unbelievable pitchers. I mean, again, Nolan Ryan, Tom Seaver, the late Tom Seaver, and this is a question that I've been talking about with some other people a lot now, whether the Mets are good or bad now, whether they'll be good or bad next season with the addition of Lindor and Carrasco. I personally just don't know how much better they will be getting these two players. I mean, they've had these amazing pitchers, in the past few seasons, and they haven't been able to do much with them. They didn't do great last season, but it was a short sample size. So I'm not really sure. Does anyone have a prediction about what the Mets will be doing next season?
If I were to say how the Mets were to be, how good the Mets would be good on the 2021 season, I would say they would probably reach the wild card, in my opinion. I mean, not necessarily, but like close to there, because the Padres have amazing pitching rotation, getting Yu Darvish and Blake Snell, like all in the offseason. But the Mets just bolstered their rotation and their offense, getting Lindor. So they got some decent players here and there. They got Michael Conforto, Jeff McNeil, and Pete Alonso. He's a very big prospect who had a successful season in the 2019. So I say they have the potential to also make in the playoffs, but I don't know how far will they go with that.
Mm-hmm. Right. All right, what do you think, Dalton, about the Mets?
Personally, I think that the Mets are the kind of team that have the talent. Just every year, they just haven't been playing like they have it. Almost like my team. My team has had a history of having guys who are just absolutely insane and having a stacked lineup, just not being able to play like it. Like Youngman said, they got a great group of guys out there. The rotation's got Syndergaard and of course, a lot of other guys that can pitch. And you got Pete Alonso at first, especially that entire lineup. But I just don't know. I mean, you look at the NL, they're in the NL East, right? Correct me if I'm right. Yeah. You look at the NL East. I mean, you look at the teams that are in it that are competing against them. It's not going to be an easy division to go past at all, period. Right. So personally, I say they're going to be bound next year for third in the NL East. That's what I think's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I believe the Braves are just amazing, and I'm still so confused how the Marlins came out of that division last season. Well, they got the wild card or something. That was still very weird to me, and I think, I agree with that point that the Mets are kind of a team that has stars and they can't perform. It's kind of like the pitching version of the Angels, because the Angels have a lot of good hitters, but they can't perform. And Jackson, this is pretty close to home, right? Because Nolan Ryan's on the Mets and all that was on the Mets. So do you think they're going to be good or bad next season?
Yeah, I think it depends on how well their starting pitching does. Everybody has to have dominant starting pitching that's in the playoffs. And so if their guys can stay healthy, Syndergaard, DeGrom, 1-2, and Carrasco is a number 3, they got a good chance. But the NL East is loaded with the Braves and also the Marlins. The Braves have dominant starters. They've got good bullpen. They have everything that you're looking for, and they have the prospects coming up. And the Marlins have a bunch of prospects coming up. Derek Jeter's done a great job with that organization. And so if you look at those three, they're all going to be battling it out. And then you have, talking about a wild card situation, you have the Padres and Dodgers. One of them will be a wild card team. And then the Central's not bad. So you're going to have a bunch of teams fighting for the last 2 spots. So we'll see what happens.
Right. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. And everyone was hating on Jeter for getting rid of a lot of the good guys, but I don't know. It seems like it's gonna turn out well because they got a ton of young guys, especially in their pitching side. So am excited to see the Marlins, and yeah, the Mets definitely will be interesting, especially now given their acquisitions in this off season. And this was a topic that Dalton brought up, and I think it's very interesting. So it's MLB like best most unbreakable records that we pretty much there's like no chance of anyone beating. I'm gonna start off by going with Cal Ripken Jr. 2,630 consecutive game streak. I mean, how many? What is that? Like a decade of not missing a game. That's the biggest, most unbreakable record to me. I don't think anyone's gonna be playing that many consecutive games ever again. I think it's pretty crazy. Dalton, what do you think your most unbreakable record is?
Well, first thing I will say is Cal Ripken Jr.'s record is definitely unbreakable. There's no question about it. I mean, that's a span of from 1981 to 1999, if I'm correct, of games played. When nowadays players can get injured and get taken out for an ingrown toenail. I mean, so, but to me, honestly, there are many records that come to my mind. First of all, Pete Rose's 4,256 hits. That's one that, has been in the question for the longest time of what is and isn't breakable, because when Derek Jeter was in his prime, they kept thinking he was going to get there, but he retired in 2014. For me, I'm going to actually have to go with Nolan Ryan's 5,714 strikeouts. Now, the thing for me is that I did the math just right before this. Nolan Ryan's strikeout total would still exist as the record, even if a pitcher had 250 strikeouts every year for 22 seasons straight. Think about that for just a second of how many strikeouts that is. That is insane. Nobody's going to touch that record. And, of course, I can go on about the 7 no-hitters. And let's see, we got the record for stolen bases by Ricky Henderson, which is also a big one.
Mm-hmm.
But the most unbreakable record, and it's actually probably not even that. I mean, that would probably be on the top 3, but I honestly think that the one that's going to stand out the most is Joe DiMaggio's 56-game hit streak.
Oh, yeah.
56 consecutive games. There was a scientist that went on to say that somebody has the same amount of chances of tying that record as Stephen Curry does of hitting a three-pointer for every single game for 60 years. That is the same percentage that you have. So those two records, the strikeout record and the hitting record, would probably have to be tied for the top berths for me.
Mm-hmm. Youngman, do you have any most unbreakable records you can think of?
I would have to agree with you, Satchel, on Cal Ripken's consecutive game streak. That is like out of the question. Like, very, very. It's like it's almost impossible to do that. Certain things that you could display the skills and have like a Hall of Fame career and somehow get the records done. But this is in terms of like how healthy you are and how often you get injured. Playing that many games consecutively is inhuman. That's
I really don't understand it, because when I played in JV, we'd play like once every 2 weeks or something, and even that was killing me. And I didn't even start. I was just going to the game, sitting on the bench, and then I'd be dead. So I can't understand starting every single game for like what do you say, Dalton? 18 years?
From 1981 to 1999, I believe. So yeah, 18 years.
That is crazy.
crazy.
Jackson, what record would stand out for you the most unbreakable record?
Well, I'll go with my grandfather and go with 7 no-hitters.
Oh yeah.
He could have had more if it wasn't errors weren't counted like they are today.
Mm-hmm.
And so he had like 15 one-hitters. And so I'll go with that. Another one's Barry Bonds, 73 home runs in one season. So I don't think you'll ever see that again. You can say steroids or not, doesn't really matter. Still impressive. And then the walk total that he had that year as well was unbelievable.
Right. Yeah. Who's the second best pitcher with the most no-hitters? Because it can't be
Sandy
close.
Koufax.
How many?
4.
Okay, so that's pretty much half as much. I mean,
Right.
Really unbelievable. I mean, what Nolan Ryan did is just unreal. Playing pretty much for the most part of 3 decades. So I really don't understand how that's possible. And yeah, let's go back to today's baseball and end it off with who we think the best pitcher in the MLB is. So I'm gonna go with Jacob deGrom because the things he's done in the past 3 seasons, the 2 seasons before Cy Young, this season he was close to Cy Young. I mean, virtually unhittable. I think 2018 and 19, his ERA was under 2. I mean, I think he's just doing numbers that's gonna put him on the all-time list if he keeps this up by the end of his career. And yeah, I'm not sure if this is gonna be debate or not because I think everyone may say Jacob deGrom. So I'm not sure. Dalton, what do you think?
I mean, Jacob deGrom is definitely a good pick for me. But personally, and I don't know how some of y'all are going to think about this, but I got to say Max Scherzer, honestly. I mean, you look at a guy who has gotten better with age, literally.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is a guy who I think 10 years ago or so was just in the independent league in Fort Worth. And he, out of nowhere, just as he got older, he got better. I mean, you talk about a guy with 2 consecutive 300 strikeout seasons, a 20 strikeout game, which only 4 other pitchers, I think, did. No, wait, hang on. So it was Roger Clemens, I know, was one, and Kerry Wood was another. I can't think about who the third guy was. It just crosses my mind. I can't remember. And he also has 2 no-hitters to go with that in the same season. So for me, he's got to be the best pitcher in the league right now, only because he's almost ageless.
Right, yeah, definitely, dude. He's definitely up there. Youngman, what do you think?
I have 2 players that I have in mind.
Okay.
One is that's overall, like not right now. Overall, Clayton Kershaw as of like this decade. It's absolutely like mind-boggling how his stats are like compared to the other pitchers. And he won how many Cy Youngs? 3 Cy Youngs, if I remember correctly.
Not sure. He won MVP, right? In
Yeah,
2014?
that's also what I wanted to point out. Like he won the MVP as a pitcher. Like
Right.
that's similar with Shane Bieber. But if you count overall season, like Clayton Kershaw has been the most consistent pitcher. He hasn't really faltered down. He's on his down age right now, but still like he's performing like other solid pitchers would do.
Mm-hmm.
On the other side, like as of right now, I would say Jacob deGrom. Just like what you said. Jacob deGrom, he's getting better with age, just like Max Scherzer. And he hasn't had like a one bad season yet. It's his ERA was all under 3.5. Never crossed the 4 mark, which is insane in my opinion.
Yeah.
And go along with that, his velocity is increasing every year from a statistical standpoint. 2020, he averaged like a 98.5 as a starter, which I don't know how you would throw that hard as a pitcher with age. You're not young. You're not that young anymore. Jacob deGrom's 32. I was surprised by that, but he's throwing harder as he ages, and he just keeps getting better and better.
Right. Yeah, Jacob deGrom, it's just crazy what he's doing right now. Jackson, what do you think? Who would you have the best pitcher pretty much going into next season or as of now?
Man, it just depends on what you're looking for. So, if you're talking about power stuff, deGrom's up there. Blake Snell's up there from the season he had this past year. If you're looking more of an older guy, you can look at Kershaw, you can look at Scherzer. So it kind of just depends on what you're looking for. But, if I had to go with somebody right now, I mean, deGrom's up there, and I'd take my bet with him going out there every 5 days. But you also want somebody that's out there every 5 days that's going to get the ball and take the ball every 5 days.
Mm-hmm. Right, and this actually brings me to remember, there was an article I was actually reading earlier today, and it said that Trevor Bauer was interested in pitching every 4 days. Jackson, do you think it's possible that a pitcher could be pitching every 4 days?
If they have the right nutrition value that they're supposed to do, they do all their exercises, they do all of their prep work, then yes, I do think it could happen. But in reality, they have to do all the preparations because athletes compete to recover. So the recover process needs to be where it needs to go.
Right. Trevor Bauer, I mean, if anyone saw his vlogs from last season, he pretty much showed his whole process going into it and all the stuff he does. So I don't know. I think it could be possible, but I don't know if he would be 100% there every single game he pitched. If he pitched every 4 days, I would rather, or every 4 games, I would rather just go with every 5 games and just make sure he's 100% pitching his perfect game every time. But yeah, that was very interesting. And yeah, it was a pleasure having you on the podcast. Very awesome hearing from you. And yeah, guys, again, thank you, Dalton Brown, Young Ben, for coming on. Does anyone have any final words, anything they want to say?
I guess one thing we got to say is thank you to Zach Campbell for doing the intro to this video.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
No, Zach Campbell, we appreciate you for doing that. Thank you for coming on for that intro segment. That was awesome. Jackson, thank you for coming along for the show.
Thank you.
It was awesome. Awesome podcast. So I guess that's all I got to say.
Yeah, man. Yeah, Zach Campbell, I forgot to say that. He was the intro. And yeah, guys, thank you guys for coming on. Stay tuned for the podcast. We're going to try to bring one out every 1 or 2 weeks, something like that. We'll see. And yeah, guys, I'll see you next time. Peace.